Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're gonna give folks a couple minutes to join. So we'll start at maybe 3 past or so. Thanks everyone for joining. We're gonna give folks a couple minutes to join. So we'll start in maybe 3 minutes. Good evening, everyone. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes to join. We'll start the presentation in a couple minutes. All right, good evening, everyone. We are going to be giving an update on the San Francisco Transportation Plan called SFTP 2050. We'll be going over the outreach from earlier this year and the draft plan. We do have breakout rooms in both Cantonese and Spanish. If you'd like to join either of those breakout rooms, there's instructions on the screen, and I will have both the Spanish and then the Cantonese translators give instructions as well.
Buenas tardes a todas y todos. Mi nombre es Esteban García. Ofreceré la presentación en español. Si desea asistir a esta reunión en español, únase a la sala de reuniones en español, el Breakout Room. Haciendo clic en el icono de las salas de reuniones, Breakout Rooms, y después haga clic en la opción de sala de reunión en español. Levante la mano si necesita ayuda uniéndose a una sala de reunión en cualquier momento.
大家好，我哋今晚係提供廣東話嘅翻譯講解。如果你哋有需要翻譯服務嘅話，你可以使用 Zoom 嘅raise hand 功能，亦都見到喺畫面上邊右邊有中文嘅聊天室，你哋可以用你嘅老鼠點 join 呢個字，就可以入到中文嘅會議室。我就會係你哋嘅主持，講解用廣東話翻譯講解今晚嘅會議內程。多謝各位。
I see there's a hand up. Raymond? Raymond, if you want to come off mute, maybe Esteban and George, you could translate in case it's associated with breakout rooms.
Raymond, ¿acaso tiene una pregunta en español? Si podría encender su micrófono para expresar, para preguntar.
And George, please.
You know what? George is
George
already in the room. So Raymond, I'm going to move you into the into the Chinese
Hi.
link. Hi. Did you-
I enjoy the Cantonese representative.
Okay, I'm going to move you into the Cantonese room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paisley. All right, so to start the presentation, I'm going to give an overview of SFTP 2050. The SFTP is our long-range transportation plan. It establishes our investment priorities for the transportation system over a 30-year horizon, so through 2050. And it positions San Francisco for federal, state, and regional funds. The plan covers all modes, so transit, walking, driving, biking, as well as all operators that serve San Francisco. It's updated every 4 years, along with the regional long-range transportation plan called Plan Bay Area, and the two plans are consistent with one another. Plan Bay Area was adopted in October of 2021. For a little bit of history and context, the last major update to the SFTP was made in 2013, and it planned through 2040. We've advanced a lot of, advanced and completed a lot of things that were in the last plan. So to highlight a few of these, neighborhood planning, which is our community-based plans that help create a pipeline of projects across the city. These have taken place through over many years. We've also reached our citywide pavement quality goal in 2021. We completed the Doyle Drive through the Presidio and the Van Ness Bus Improvement Project. Central Subway will also be opening soon. And through quick build projects, we've been able to do many safety improvements on the Vision Zero network around the city. We did outreach for this SFTP in spring of this year. It included a survey, community meetings, and a town hall presentation like the one we're having tonight. Our goal was to understand community priorities for the discretionary revenues, the money that has the most flexibility and how it can be spent. And we worked with community-based organizations to help promote the survey and the town hall. We reached people across the city. We had 500 responses to our survey, and we had 17 meetings with community-based organizations across the city. And we heard two different types of themes. First is policy themes. These are on the right. These are guidance for how to prioritize the discretionary revenues. They include expanding transit service beyond what's currently operating, improving safety across the city, and planning for the next generation of transportation investments. We also heard our policy themes. These are areas where we know we need to continue to focus our efforts through projects and programs. These include improving accountability in our project delivery, incorporating equity into our project implementation, and also making transit more affordable, improving personal security to address perceptions of safety risks on our streets and on the transit system, and making regional transit trips easier and more reliable. The SFTP includes two types of plans. The first is the investment scenario. This is about $80 billion in expected transportation revenues. That's shown on the left. The second is the vision scenario, which is about $95 billion and accounts for potential new revenue sources. Within these revenue estimates, there's two types of money that we're talking about. First is committed funds. Those are shown in blue. They make up the majority of the revenue estimates. They don't have much flexibility in how they can be spent. Discretionary revenues, which are shown in green, have more flexibility in how they can be spent. This portion of the revenue estimate also includes the 2022 Transportation Expenditure Plan, which is known as Measure L. The SFTP and the expenditure plan help inform one another, and the expenditure plan helps implement the long-range transportation plan. The Board of Supervisors put Measure L on the November 2022 ballot, and the measure would approve a new transportation expenditure plan and extend the existing half-cent sales tax for transportation for 30 years. Measure L does not raise city taxes and requires a 2/3 majority vote by San Francisco voters before it can be enacted. So the SFTP considers how to prioritize these different revenues to advance our goals through a combination of projects and programs. And the transportation needs exceed the amount of money that we have available in the future. So we are basically looking at how to spread the discretionary revenues across the many needs that we have based on what we've heard from the community, our known city and regional priorities, and the previous work that we've done through the Connect SF process. So I'll go through some of the benefits that the SFTP investment could bring. These are all based on a comparison of a future transportation system, both with and without the investments. And I see some questions in the chat, so I'm going to come back to them at the end. So feel free to keep putting them in there. First is safety. The investment plan includes funding for about 200 miles of pedestrian and bike improvements that help advance our Vision Zero goals. This includes continuing the Safe Routes to School program, investing in traffic calming to slow vehicle speeds, and additional safety improvements like signals, sidewalk extensions, and crosswalk improvements. Street maintenance is also funded to maintain the average current quality of our roads. There's also investments to upgrade sidewalk signs, signals, and bike lanes. And as we do these street maintenance improvements, it will also help us to prepare for the risks of climate change. Investments in transit capital will help make the system that we have operate more efficiently. So this will include projects like core capacity for BART and Muni to run longer and more frequent trains, as well as transit priority to keep buses on the busiest lines from being stuck in traffic. There's also funding for paratransit operations and free Muni for use. The investments in the SFTP also help improve access. We would see commute times fall citywide for people taking transit and driving. Job access would also improve citywide for both for the city and regional trips. And we'd be able to plan for the next generation of transit and freeway projects. The plan also helps shift modes from driving to other more sustainable options. There's more than a 3% decrease in the daily vehicle miles traveled per San Francisco resident. And paired with the electrification of the transit fleet and ferry, we'll be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So here you can see the different areas where benefits were measured and how they align to the SFTP and Connect SF goals. Combined, you can see with the plus signs, the SFTP investments help address all of our goal areas. And so now I'm going to go through an overview of the investment plan. So this is first the investment plan, which again is about $80 billion. The chart shows the investments in blue and the unmet needs in red. The discretionary revenues have been spread across these different areas to capture the priorities as they've evolved through the Connect SF process. So here we can begin to address many of the equity gaps, advance our transportation goals, but there's still gaps. The most notable gap is in transit operations down at the bottom. Here, this means that we cannot increase our investment levels for transit operations beyond what we have in 2022. We also have additional needs for street safety and transit and street maintenance. Here you have the vision plan. So again, this is $95 billion. It accounts for about $15 billion in potential new revenues. We can help advance our needs further. For street safety, we can meet the street safety improvement and safe routes to school needs. We can also increase our investments in things like new signs and signals and complete streets efforts. For transit operations, we can help close the operating gaps for BART and Caltrain, and we can exceed the 2019 investment levels for Muni service. For state of good repair, we can close the maintenance backlog for all of for all of the transit operators, including ferry. And for our next generation of transit, we can continue to study and implement our future kind of large-scale transportation projects. The SFTP will also have, it will continue to advance our citywide policies and identify some new policy areas in the coming years. So I'm going to highlight a few on this list, and I'm happy to answer questions about the others as well. For equity, access, and affordability, this is the neighborhood planning efforts and continuing those, and also expanding those to include more equity planning and planning to address the changes in land use. This will help create a pipeline of projects across the city to reflect community needs and priorities. The traveler safety and security is supporting investments like lighting, elevator attendants, security cameras to help increase visibility across the transit system, and also continuing to invest in safe streets and pursue legislation for speed management tools to help meet our Vision Zero goals. Transit sustainability for all operators is recognizing the need to explore ways to expand funding for transit capital and operations. And for new mobility, recognizing that there's a lot of testing of new mobility and autonomous or driverless vehicles in the city. And we want to make sure that all of these options support San Francisco's transportation goals and priorities. Quickly on next steps, this is the draft plan, and we are doing an outreach round right now, and we will be bringing this plan to adoption for completion at the end of this year. I'm happy to go back to slides or answer any questions folks may have. If you want to put them in the chat, that will be the easiest way to make sure we get to all the questions. I see one question that came about potential new revenue. If this is just estimated growth of San Francisco. So the potential new revenue assumes new revenue sources. We don't define the specific sources, but it could include things like local and regional measures, or vehicle license fees would be another example of things that could come in the future. And Cyrus, I see your comment also about commute times being an issue for outer neighborhoods. That's a very important note. Let's see. And you didn't understand the operations in the base plan. So the investment plan, so just the investment plan for the $80 billion, I think this is about transit operations. And so the investment plan assumes or can maintain the investment levels for muni operations that are based off of 2022. So keeping the same level of investment as we currently have now. There isn't money available or revenues in the investment plan to exceed our investment levels that we have now. So in the vision revenue, the potential new revenues help provide more funding to exceed our investment levels for muni. And then Janice, this question is about with hybrid working from home, will Muni Express buses ever come back? So I'm going to have MTA answer this question. Keith?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Janice. We right now are working on a more near-term evaluation of our system. We recognize that there was a lot of changes that had to be made during the pandemic, and also recognize that there is still critical needs throughout the system. And so we are focused on bringing the service plan that was approved by our MTA board at the end of 2021 to be fully implemented by 2023. That's when we project to have enough resources to fully implement that. We'll be evaluating during the upcoming year what the service needs and gaps are during that time, and within our operating resources we'll attempt to best address the needs throughout the system. There will be an opportunity after 2023-24 to consider expansions and modifications beyond that plan that was approved by our board in December 2021.
And then Peter, I see a question. So when I think this is also about the transit operations investment levels. So the 2022 service or the 2022 investment levels that are included in the investment plan are for 2022 levels of investment, so current. In the vision plan, there's the additional revenue allows us to meet the 2019 investment levels and also exceed that. So we can have even more investments than we did in 2019 for transit operations. I hope that clarifies the question. So the congestion pricing plan is currently paused. There is an assumption in the plan that congestion pricing at some point would happen. So it is included in this plan, and it's also included in our modeling assumptions. And maybe I could have Dan speak to the impacts of the congestion pricing program.
So I'm sorry, the question is, what does happen? Could that help fund some of the investment needs of San Francisco? Is that the question?
Oh, that's
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan. So I think at various times we have looked at congestion pricing on its own, and also obviously we model it as part of the overall transportation plan. The congestion pricing, the underlying assumptions are that, oh, hello, my name is Dan Tischler. I'm a modeler at the San Francisco Transportation Authority, and I'm responsible for much of the technical modeling work around the San Francisco Transportation Plan. All right, so anyway, where was I? So the congestion pricing, the kind of the assumptions within it are that some of the revenue of the congestion pricing program does go and feed additional transportation service, and so the program is both is a combination of there being additional service on some muni routes and also some regional transit routes, mainly buses going to and from the core of San Francisco, along with the Court and Toll boundaries. Now, I'm not sure if that fully answers the question.
Thanks, Dan. Peter, we see your comment about meeting the 2019 service levels. Thank you for the comment. Any other questions from folks? Howard, see your comment as well, for a more visionary public transit system. I will say that, right, you know, the pandemic is a very challenging time. There's a lot of funding constraints, and you know, this was a very challenging time to plan for a long-term our long-term transportation needs. A lot of the money in our revenues is committed, which means there isn't much flexibility in how it can be moved around. So the discretionary revenues, what we heard from the last round of outreach is that it is important to fund all modes, right? To help advance safety, to help advance transit, keep transit service going, and address the many other needs that people felt were important, that we've identified in our past plans and are also our priorities. So with the kind of limited discretionary money and flexibility that we have, that is what is allowing us to maintain our investment levels for 2022 service. And the SFTP is updated every 4 years. So as conditions change or our revenue assumptions change over the next 4 years, that's our opportunity to relook at the SFTP and make updates to capture the latest news and trends of revenues. Maria, is there anything you want to add to that?
Hi, it's Maria Lombardo. I'm the Chief Deputy at the Transportation Authority. Yeah, that funding is so complicated when you're getting it from all different sources, but just to illustrate, if it's not clear what Elisa said about not having the flexibility to direct funds, a lot of the committed money shown in those slides that Elisa had up are federal formula funds for transit maintenance, like capital assets, keeping them in a state of good repair, and we cannot divert those to operations. So that is why if you looked at the additional revenues we added to the vision, because we don't know what those are yet, we're assuming those are new measures that come to pass. Thank you, Elisa, or whoever's doing that. We directed a lot of that towards transit operations because we have more discretionary money to do so. So basically that the money we get always has strings attached. And most of the sources that we have in our forecast that we think could come to San Francisco over the next 30 years aren't sources that we can direct to operations. So we are probably looking at some new local measures. I know there are discussions about a new regional measure that may very well include transit operations. And because this is such a hot topic, I will note the Metropolitan Transportation Commission staff is talking about finding transit operating money to avoid this transit fiscal cliff we're all hearing about be one of their top legislative priorities for the coming session. So we hear you. We're on it too. Thanks, Elisa.
Muted, sorry. Janice, the point about coordination with other transit agencies around the region, this is a policy initiative area. So this will be captured in the SFTP. We know that it's very important. We heard in outreach as well the need to make transit trips more coordinated, reliable, and easier. So this will be captured in that SFTP. Peter, I'm not sure that I understand the question about the specifics of investment levels. If you could add a bit more detail. The pink bars are unmet need. So you can see between the two, the investment and the vision plan, the bars shrink. So our need is far greater, and it's not unique this year. This is, you know, always the case. Transportation is very, very expensive to fund, and we have a lot of needs. So our needs are bigger than the money that we have. So the red bar is showing what the remaining unmet need is based on what we've collected. The horizon for the plan is 2050. So 30 years. And again, it's updated every 4 years. And the plan would be is expected to be completed by the end of the year. So a draft plan will likely be available in the December timeframe. Peter, I see this is hard by text. If you want to come off mute and ask the question, that is okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to dance between two questions here.
You can ask
On the
both, no
pink,
problem.
yeah, I'm trying. So the pink includes revenues that have not yet been identified.
So the pink is, we did an agency-wide call for projects, right? We asked all the different agencies what the needs are through 2050. So that is what's represented by the pink. In this graph, the blue is showing the investment plan. So, you know, for example, major transit projects, it's the investment plan is funding about 2/3 of it. And then the vision plan is funding that little additional sliver. And then the remaining red bar is the amount of need that we don't have funding for. Does that answer the question?
Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So this investment plan does include, this is called this is the 80 billion investment plan, and it includes a chunk of pink that's money that's not yet there.
Correct.
In which case it seems that on operations, the blue is the money that's currently there. The pink should be the amount of money that's needed to restore 2019 levels of service.
Correct.
So then the draft investment plan does include not just 2022 actual, but a pre-COVID level of service, even if it's not allocated exactly the way it is now.
So the red bar is showing the investments that would be needed to meet the 2019 investment levels.
Okay, so I just want to make clear that I don't think that's that's not what I understood from your explanation before. So the draft investment plan does include a level of restoration of a level of service to 2019 levels. Again, even if it's not allocated exactly the same way it is now. You know, so the pink represents the size of the fiscal cliff. You know, the amount of money that SFMTA does not currently have to restore operations, you know, above current revenue expectations.
Maria, I saw you come off.
So just to be real clear, it's not fully funded in the investment plan, Peter, because that pink or orange, whatever color that looks like on your screen, we don't have the money for it in the $80 billion investment plan.
So is the 80 billion the blue or the blue plus the pink that's shown on this one?
It's just the blue. The pink is the part that we could not fund. It's the unfunded need.
Okay.
Sorry, that's confusing. We can label that better.
Okay. I guess my other question that, you know, was for things like the major transit projects. What are there specific transit projects that are assumed as part of this plan, like the Central Subway and the Van Ness BRT were last time around? and this is getting at, things like the rapid transit projects, that have been appearing on some of the Connect SF maps. Not that I want to take this comment as endorsing that as project necessarily, but I'm asking what transit projects are included in the plan? Is it specified, or is this just a amount of money that's thrown out there?
Yeah, so the plan will have more detail about the projects. So the major transit projects, that includes Muni reliability and efficiency. It also includes core capacity. So things like that. The bigger projects that you're mentioning, things like Central Subway, those are captured in the transit enhancements. So the third one on this list.
Okay, so what is included in those transit enhancements?
The transit enhancements includes projects like a new Bayview Caltrain station. It also includes, let me see if I'm getting this right.
Mission, you're right, Mission Bay, this is Maria, Mission Bay Ferry Landing.
Yeah.
And then there's planning money for doing additional planning and early project development for whatever that next generation set of projects are with the next BRTs, the next rail extensions. This, for those of you who followed the Measure L, the major transit projects parallel what are in the 2022 expenditure plan. So the Caltrain downtown extension, as Elisa said, BART Muni core capacity, Caltrain service vision, and then Muni forward, which is really the Muni reliability and efficiency.
So other than for planning money, there aren't specific assumptions about things like Geary Corridor, 19th Avenue, Central Subway extension, that sort of stuff. There's no specific list in here other than as planning money.
Correct.
Okay.
Janice,
I don't disagree with that, but I think you should be transparent about that.
thank you, Peter. Janice, I see your question about Next Best software. So I'm going to have Keith answer this question from SFMTA. Keith, I'll read it. Is the Next Best software still installed and upgraded to show status messages to riders waiting at bus shelters?
Hi, this is again Keith Tanner from SFMTA. That's a good question. That unfortunately is not my division, so that I could be able to most accurately respond to that. We'd be happy to follow up with specific Next Best questions and information, but I don't want to misreport the incorrect answer. I do know, I can say that there is a new version of Next Bus and customer service information that our agency is looking to roll out, but I don't believe that it's online just yet.
And Ronald, PAX is included in the plan. That is under major transit projects, that first line up at the top.
I guess I now don't understand what's meant major transit projects and what's transit enhancements. And I just think you should be more explicit and transparent about what's included in those.
Okay. Thank you for the comment, Peter. I guess the transit enhancements is I guess I would categorize it as new, like the new big things for the transit system. So those are like the major extensions and expansions and improvements to the transit system.
Well, if I may
Yep,
slightly amend that, Elisa, this is Maria Lombardo again. So under the transit enhancements category, there are Bayview Caltrain Station and Mission Bay Ferry Landing, as Elisa mentioned. There's the planning money for that big next generation of BRT, rail, whatever it is. Then there's also a program, a bucket of money for what we're calling just generically customer touching transit enhancements. So this could be improved next bus, improved bus stops, better wayfinding, bicycle access to the transit stations. So it's a programmatic category of smaller customer touching improvements.
And what is in major transit projects besides PAX?
Major transit projects has Muni reliability and efficiency. So these are things like Muni forward improvements. It also has Muni core capacity, BART core capacity, PAX, the Pennsylvania Avenue alignment, and the Caltrain downtown extension.
Yeah, and just to be transparent, the Pennsylvania Avenue alignment just has planning money. It's not the full project.
Yes, Gia, that seems like a good generalization of major transit projects. System improvements.
Elisa, you also have a hand raised when you're
Oh.
set.
Thanks. Who has the hand? Whoever has the hand up can unmute. I can't see that. Oh,
Yep.
Howard. Hello.
Hi, it's Howard Wong. Is there money to find ways to improve the overall transit system in the quickest way possible, looking for the most cost-effective ways of improving transit, whether it be fast tracking the communications type of informational systems, whether it be looking at improvement of each line, how bus stops are positioned, how transit shelters look, how they communicate, so that we can see quicker results.
Yeah, I think that question is really suited for SFMTA. Keith, gonna answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Elisa, and thank you, Howard, for the question. Again, Keith Tanner from the SFMTA speaking. What we are proposing for our transit service through SFMTA with Muni is to have a cost neutral evaluation of our system over the coming years, where we would continue to analyze and assess the rollout of our approved December 2021 service plan. So we would be using community engagement and stakeholder feedback to understand how the network is performing. We'd look at service gaps and potential expansion ideas for the future, but in that time frame of the next couple of years, we would be looking at the more nimble improvements and efficiencies we can implement within our system without additional cost or revenue source at that time. Of course, there would be the interest in pursuing more expansive and transformational changes should new revenue be available in the coming years.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, there's a few that just came in. Barbara, there the question from Barbara is around a Bayview Caltrain station and why is it needed because the Paul station was recently closed. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. There is a study was just completed done by the SFCTA and the planning department for the Southeast Rail Station study. And so this looked at, let's see if this is going to work. This looks at station locations in the Southeast to bring back service to the Bayview that was removed by the Paul station. When the Paul station was closed, that service became no longer available. In the Bayview, there are 2 stations that came out of the Southeast Rail Station study, Oakdale and Evans. And there's some upcoming work to determine a station location and continue the planning work for a new station. And then Peter, I see your question about transit enhancements in the vision plan. So this is the vision plan. So again, this is that green bar. And so the vision plan allows us to increase some of the investments. And let me see, I'm just checking my paper unless someone has it off the top of their head. The majority of this is associated with increasing the investments for those big next generation projects. So investing more in planning for things like Central Subway or the major new rail projects. Oh, thanks, Maria, for the added note. Maria, I don't know if you have a response to Ronald's question about how much revenue can we expect from the rail yard redevelopment?
I can get back to Roland with the estimate study.
Thanks for all the great questions. If there's any more, there's only a few of us left, so you can come off chat and ask or come off mute. Howard, go ahead. I saw your hand come up.
Yep. One of the, even before the pandemic, there are actually very few public transit agencies that were seeing increases in ridership. There was generally, including Muni, somewhat of a declining ridership, which is very tragic considering the billions of dollars that SFCTA and Muni invested in the infrastructure and system. So it seems that part of planning that the citizenry and the riders would expect from our transit professionals is to start evaluating how the few cities or a few countries that have expanded and improved public transit and increased ridership, and to at least evaluate and compare what they've done with what we've done. Seattle was doing small micro projects. They were improving lines line by line, improving locations of bus shelters and all the small things that gave customers a sense of, being special, something that they enjoyed. And so ridership was inching up a bit. Houston put in a free downtown loop, nice new air-conditioned buses, nice bus shelters, and they saw a little bit of a ridership upgrade. And of course, there are other countries that have had much more ridership gain over the last decades than we have in our city and in the United States in general. So it seems that some of the money, planning money, should be starting to look at best practices around the world and see how they're applicable to our city.
Thank you, Howard, for that good comment. Any other final questions? I know we're coming up at the end of our time. Keith shared a link to something MTA is doing. Oh, for Next Bus. That's in the chat. All right, if there's no other questions from folks, we appreciate, is there a link to the presentation? That is a good question. Barbara, if you could message me directly, I could send you, there's not one right this second, but I could send one to you. Or maybe I can pull one up.
Elisa, is this the one? Sorry, this is Marie. Is this the one you presented at board?
Yeah, do you have
Okay,
that
I'll
handy?
pull it up while you're talking.
Okay, great. Barbara, we'll drop a link in the chat. Give Maria a second to pull it up. It's hard for me to multitask with that. Thank you, everyone, for your time and joining tonight and asking great questions. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry, just if I can get in one other word here. I'm a little surprised, and I'm not sure what's right and wrong and appropriate or not, you know, and maybe there should be some discussion of this, but it seems that even under the visionary plan, you're saying over the next, how many years does this cover?
30.
30 years, the only major transit enhancements, you know, major capital program is the Caltrain extension.
The only major, could you say that one more time, please?
As I understand it, even under the visionary scenario, there aren't any major capital investments, new subways, say, other than the Caltrain project. And I don't disagree that I strongly believe the Caltrain extension should be our next major subway investment. But looking beyond that, there's really nothing in here, even in the visionary plan over the next 30 years. That sounds...
Not for like major enhancements, but there are like the Bayview Caltrain station is something that is
I strongly believe the Bayview Caltrain station, you know, should be constructed, but that's a relatively small project.
correct. Yeah, so the money that's in the bucket for those big expansion projects that you're referencing, that could include some implementation, but it's just unclear at this point what exactly that would be. So it could include some implementation, or it could include some additional planning and all the stuff.
It doesn't look, the way you've described it, it doesn't look like the money is in here. I mean, even for, let's say the city decides that, you know, the extension of the central subway should be the next priority. I'm just using that as an example. It doesn't look like there is money in here to do that in the next 30 years. Even if we don't specify what it is, you know, there's nothing in here for a project on that scale other than the Caltrain extension. You know, whether it should be, and there's nothing, you said the Pennsylvania Avenue project isn't in here, the central subway expansion isn't in here, let alone any of those other schemes that Connect SF has put forward, you know, and I just would ask whether that is being too conservative looking 30 years ahead.
Got it. Yeah, the PAX is in here, but again, it's in the vision plan that we see a lot of the revenues go towards PAX to help with implementation.
You said the PAC was in here only for planning.
No, the PAX is in here for construction as well in the vision plan. So the vision plan would include funding for construction. And we could assume that the vision, that extra money in the vision plan could be additionally leveraged to make that a fully funded project. And for the expansion projects, so things like a next central subway or the extension of the central subway, it's possible that the revenues in there could implement that project. But it also, like, it is, like Maria said, it's in a bucket. So that bucket also includes all of the planning work as well for the other big projects.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I thought that isn't the way you described it before. And the additional amount, you know, the green piece, the vision piece, the additional money in either of those categories for transit enhance, for those two enhancement categories are very small. You know, those aren't large enough buckets to build the Pennsylvania Avenue extension. They're very small buckets, what's shown in there. And, you know, I thought, you know, what you're saying now doesn't seem to agree with how it was described before. And again, the buckets as you show them are too small to do that.
I'd like to add to that. I think the emphasis, we tend to overemphasize large infrastructure projects. I think we need to look at the whole system and the overall improvements that we can make to start dramatically increasing ridership. And, you know, we really need to look at what other countries are doing, other cities are doing that are working on streetscape designs and making the transit experience special and well-liked. And in 30 years, we're also forgetting something that's very important. The technology of mobility is changing day by day, year by year. And in 30 years, where we're going to be, Treasure Island, for instance, is planning a pilot program for autonomous shuttles in Treasure Island. Cruise has driverless cars without backup drivers on our streets at this moment. And we see transit micro shuttles being used in other cities on fixed routes. We see micro shuttles on demand in some cities, picking people up from their homes, going to their destinations. So I think if you want to say visionary, you really have to start looking at the rapidly changing mobility systems that we're already seeing this year.
Howard, I'd never want to argue that those things aren't important and worth pursuing, but, you know, for instance, you use Seattle as an example, and Seattle is doing all of those small scale things on the surface, but they're also investing a fortune in expansion of the Link light rail subway system. I don't think it's either or, especially if you're looking 30 years ahead.
All right, thank you everyone for your time. We are approaching the end of this meeting. So everyone had really great comments and questions. We've taken note of all of them. And there's more information on the website. That is also where new information would be posted. Yeah, we hope, keep an eye out to the website. That's where the draft report would come out as well.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.